Yodotushi here. Definitely not the video you were probably expecting from me, but it's always been a dream of mine at some point to actually make videos on Genshin Impact and reach a wide audience. So hopefully this video does reach that wide audience I've been always hoping for. In today's video, we're going to be going over all of the 4.7 characters, which character you should roll for, and I'll give my personal thoughts at the end, as per usual with the star roll videos. With that being said, let's hop right into it. So let's start with the best character this patch. That is obviously going to be Furina. Furina is a character that I've been using ever since her debut in Genshin Impact, and for me, she has been the most comfortable, most well-rounded, and most fun character to use, honestly, because she gives your damage dealer or whoever else you use in the team party a ton of damage. If you plan to use any sub DPS alongside your main damage dealer, they're also going to benefit from her team-wide buffs. It really feels like a team damage eccentric character versus other characters that mostly just buff your on-field character, if that makes sense. Furina is a better Yelan, essentially, a Yelan for everybody. Now, let's be realistic here. This is going to be, for a lot of people, a character that you may roll for copies of because you most likely already have her at C0. As you do get more copies on this character, she becomes even better. To be honest, I would say she is currently still, in this game, the best character to have maxed out, just because it changes her team, I would say her team role. She becomes a damage buffer and a healer at the same time, meaning she makes your teams a lot more flexible, and you're able to free up that slot you had for a healer previously. So you can kick out Jean, you can kick out Sigewinne out of your teams, and add in someone else. Now, obviously, if you are using Zhao, if you are using any plunge attacker, then you probably do want to keep Sigewinne. But let's say you were healing. Let's say you were using Sigewinne as you were using Jean in those teams, right? Where you need the VV shred and you also need the healing that is provided from the character. Then you can replace those characters with someone else because now you have someone who is going to give you the heals you needed, and all then you need is just another damage buffer, or heck, even another damage dealer. With the healing that is provided by this character and the further damage boost, because you are getting copies all the way up to E6, because those extra copies allow you to get more fanfare stacks and a lot more easier, she becomes a character that is a DPS of sorts. A character that allows you to shred every enemy in the game that is not Hydra, of course, just like Yelan would. This character is essentially C6 Yelan, but better in terms of DPS. And again, since I've had her with C6, I've never really regretted it. Because again, she is a character I use all the time. And with any character you use all the time, having them essentially be at the best of their capabilities is going to be nice for your account long term. And again, this is a character that is here to stay on your account long term, just like Nahida is, for instance. Now, real talk, Genshin has never really been a game where you needed to pull for additional copies of a character. Because the game is so easy, you can clear everything in the game with C0 of that character. But we do know that we are getting a new reiteration of Spiral Abyss, or in-game rather, in Genshin Impact with the release of 4.7. But the question still lies here. Do you even need to have more additional copies for a character, even with this new endgame? Probably not. So I would say, just like C6 Yelan, C6 Furina is not necessary. But man, does she make the game a lot more fun, just like C6 Yelan also makes the game a lot more fun. You just clear everything much more quickly. And if you are that type of player that has money to burn, or rather, that's very harsh to say on camera, if you're someone who has money that you don't mind spending on a gacha game because you technically are burning money, then go for it, because again, she is still the best C6 character in the game as it stands. Some of my favorite teams to use with Furina is going to be Navia alongside Bennett and Shiori. I like this team a lot because Furina is able to buff everyone in the team. Bennett helps Furina get those fanfare stacks. Although I do have C6 Furina, she can get those stacks herself. Bennett does give a nice attack boost to Navia and Shiori, and on top of that, it helps Navia get the additional element criteria she needs in order to get the attack boost in her own kit, and then Navia shreds and deals a ton of damage. This has been my favorite team to use ever since the release of Shiori, Navia, and Furina. And again, these are all Fontainian characters, so it only makes sense as to why. Listen, Fontaine has been the region of power creep. We all know this. In a team like this, you can get by with using Yelan still, alongside your Alhaitham and your Nahida, but let's just say you don't want to use Yelan anymore. You can throw in Furina and she's still a very solid replacement. In fact, I'll go as far as say she's going to give even more damage to your Alhaitham and your Nahida. Nahida's a character that has a lot of damage as a sub DPS, especially if you do go towards her crit stats and give her a little bit of elemental mastery. You don't need a 1,000 elemental mastery on Nahida, but the elemental mastery she does give to Alhaitham is very important. So maybe in teams like this, you probably do want to have more elemental mastery just for Alhaitham. But I will say, though, that the damage potential she has alongside Alhaitham is very solid. And speaking of Alhaitham, Alhaitham has remained one of the strongest damage dealers in the game ever since his debut. It was really a surprise to see how strong he ended up being after, what happened in the beta at that time in Genshin Impact. He's just a character that has never, ever lost his relevance because he's just been a very strong damage dealer upon his debut. And damage dealers nowadays, for the most part in Genshin Impact, right, have been very hit or miss. Like, for instance, Navia has been really good. Clorinde is probably going to be a character that you can, not probably, is a character you most likely can skip. Spoiler alert, we'll talk about her later in the video. But Alhaitham has been a character ever since its launch that has remained of the top tier category, just like Neuvillette has. And again, I've never really seen this character falling off anytime, especially him being a Dendro damage dealer. We don't have very many Dendro damage dealers aside from Tighnari. So again, just Alhaitham being a character that is of that element helps him more so than hurt him, to be honest. Now, what I like best about this character is that he reminds me essentially of Keqing, but just a Dendro version of that character. Now, I know you probably have heard this back in the day, and it still remains the same, but he is essentially a way better damage dealer than Keqing, even in Keqing's best team, right? Alhaitham, for me, has been one of the most fun characters to use, because just like how fun Keqing is, especially with Thundering Fury, Alhaitham is fun in his own way, because he pretty much plays the same just like her, right? Well, this is a should you pull video, and if you don't have some of the characters like Nahida to give him the elemental mastery he needs and allow him to do more damage in those spread teams or even Hyper Bloom, do you really need Alhaitham? I could say for certain that he isn't as strong of a pull as Furina in this patch, especially with her being in the same patch as him, but he is a character that you will find a lot of value in if you have some of those other characters on your account to help him deal as much damage as you can possible. And last but not least, let's talk about this because it's very important. With the upcoming Notland region, right, which we'll talk about later in the video, DPS characters for the most part that have been pre-Fontaine, pre-Notland, maybe characters you probably should not roll on at all because Fontaine has been a lot of power creep. Notland may end up also being power creep. But again, we have no way of confirming this for sure. It's only just a sit and wait, and we'll tell as time goes on. But Alhaitham is a character that is strong right now, but will he always be top tier, right? Will there ever be another Dendro character that essentially does more damage than him? Again, we have no way of knowing until more characters do release. He does, like I said, fill in a niche that no other character fills in currently aside from like Tighnari. But other than that, he is still a character that is worth your pulls if you do like Dendro DPS. And again, you have some of those options you need in order for him to deal as much damage as he can. Just understand that characters like Neuvillette exist, so it's not too far-fetched to believe that there will be other characters that are also like Neuvillette, but for the Dendro element as well. Now let's talk about Clorinde, who is going to be the character I'm going to be rolling for in 4.7. Now I have Reinshogun on the screen, so it's obviously not Clorinde. But the thing is about Clorinde and Reinshogun is that you can pretty much play them in the same main damage dealer teams. So for instance, you could play Reinshogun in an aggravate team, which is where you'll probably be playing your Clorinde as well. Now Clorinde is a character that has had a very interesting beta. This is the first time I really can't say for certain that she is a character you want to pull for if you do have characters like Keqing or characters like Reinshogun existing on your account. But what I can say for certain is that her animations are chef's kiss, and she is a very gorgeous character. But the lightning element, electro element, has always been my favorite in Genshin Impact. I'm not even going to lie or deny that. But do you really need Clorinde when we already have solid electro damage dealers in the game right now? Probably not, but again, her animations and her design is just chef's kiss, so let that do the talking. Now, what I do like about electro characters is that there is maybe a chance that they do end up working with Kujo-Sara, even though Clorinde may be a character that has longer field time than is necessary to utilize Kujo-Sara. Again, I have to play around with the character and then I'll get a feel for whether or not she can work with Kujo-Sara. I think Kujo-Sara is a very strong buffer. The problem is we haven't had a character that is able to utilize Kujosara as much after the release of Raiden Shogun. It's always just been Raiden Shogun and Kashin that can work with Kujosara. But man, if you are an Electro character, think of a character in the tier of Neuvillette, but you're also able to utilize Kujosara. That character would be absolutely insane. But again, we have no idea of knowing if Clorinde is going to be that character, and who knows if we'll ever receive that character in Genshin Impact ever. So Clorinde has more of just a should you pull presence in today's video, because Clorinde is going to be a character that plays a huge role in the upcoming Kashin video I have planned for you all. And speaking of Kashin, is Clorinde a character that is worth rolling if you have a well invest into Kashin? Without a doubt, a Clorinde with Mist Splitter is going to be better than Kashin in pretty much every team. But the only thing is it really worth justifying when you already have a well-invested to Kashin, or maybe even a Kashin with maxed out copies? I was going to say Eidolons, maxed out constellations. Because at Constellation 6, Kashin gets even more damage bonus for herself, which allows her to deal even more damage alongside Mist Splitter, which is still her best weapon to this day. You don't really need to waste resources for Clorinde when you can just wait for the not-land characters if you want to invest into something to further boost your account more than Clorinde would. But that's just my opinion, and I do want to save a deeper explanation of this when we do have that video go live on this channel. Last but not least, we have Sigewinne. Sigewinne, I have no idea how to say this character's name, but we do have this little bunny-looking rabbit character of the Fontaine region. Now, she's a character that buffs your elemental skills, which is pretty much a first in Genshin Impact, I want to say. The reason why I have Shenhe on the screen is because she buffs the elemental skill of your cryo characters. But to have a full-blown elemental skill buffer in a character is pretty much going to give her value in itself for a lot of teams, particularly teams where you're using characters that have very long-lasting elemental skills. Think of characters like Nahida, characters like Furina, I don't know, I almost say Fontaine, but Furina, right, who's in the same patch. But if I had to say which one you should choose, if you don't even have Furina to begin with, or you want more copies of Furina, obviously it's always best to go for a new character over a duplicate character. But if you had neither, I would of course just say go for Furina, because you can't buff Furina's elemental skill if you don't even have Furina to begin with. But there is a lot of characters that deal most, if not all, their damage to their elemental skill. So there is definitely value to be had with the release of Sigewinne. But the question still lies, do you really need this character when we have already pre-existing damage buffers in the game like Furina, characters like Nahida, who works really well with a character like Yae, Miko anyways? I really don't know. I genuinely don't know. This is going to be a wait-and-see character, and thank goodness, again, that she is a character that already doesn't have too much value to begin with, right? When we already have characters like Furina existing. But again, it's just a wait-and-see scenario, so we'll just play by ear. And again, I can't really give a for sure answer on this, but I will say, though, if you do enjoy her pastel appearance and you like characters like Kokomi, then this is a character that I could say has a lot of value already for you to begin with, just on design alone, if that is your fancy. And there is one thing I didn't talk about, sure. You're going to need two teams anyways when it comes to tackling the hardest contents the game has to offer. So having a Furina on one side and having Sigewinne on the other side doesn't seem all too bad, especially when you consider they're both of the Hydro element, so the team comps you can both use them in is going to be around the same anyways. It's just that Furina is a lot more flexible as a character because she buffs your overall damage, not just a part of your kit, for instance. But it's going to be the should you pull video here. This was honestly a blast making, and it definitely was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. I definitely can ramble a lot when it comes to games I've played a ton, and this goes without saying, I've been playing Genshin Impact for years. But I'm going to have more videos on Genshin Impact, such as the, well, recent Venti video, and then I will have a Kashin video upcoming, so look forward to that. Thank you for watching, and have a nice rest of your day. Obviously, Furina is going to be the best character to pull in this patch, but above all else, you should definitely save for Notland, because that is also around the corner. Good luck. Peace.